Alright, so the second part here, we're going to talk about how we make ATP. So how we actually get energy from the food that we eat. And it's going to happen in two different ways, how we can actually make the ATP itself. So that first way you see there is called substrate level phosphorylation. If you remember the word substrate, we learned about that with enzymes. And so that's exactly what this is if you look at this picture, all we're doing is we're taking ADP, which is adenosine diphosphate. That means it only has two phosphates. And we're going to be adding this extra phosphate here with the use of an enzyme. So all it's going to do is stress this bond so that this phosphate goes over here, and now we have ATP and it can be released. So that's going to be the one way that it can happen. And that's not really the most common way, is substrate level phosphorylation. The more common way in aerobic respiration, you can see 90% of the time it happens this way, is by using something called ATP synthase. So ATP synthase is going to be an enzyme, and I think the easiest way to describe it is to show you this video. So what's going to happen here is through some processes we're going to talk about in a little bit, these little pluses that you see floating around are hydrogens. That's H plus, because if you remember, hydrogen is just protons. So what's going to happen is due to those electrons that are bouncing around, the protons are going to build up on one side of a membrane, and this purple thing that you can see right here that they're going to be going through is going to be the ATP synthase that we're talking about. So what happens is, you can see over here, this is a membrane, and we're going to have a high concentration of H plus on this side of the membrane and a low concentration on the other. So due to the rules of diffusion, it's going to want to go, the H plus ions are going to want to go across this membrane. However, the only way that they can get through is through this ATP synthase here. And what's going to happen is that's going to cause it to spin like you see here. And that's going to produce enough energy to make ATP, to put that final phosphate onto it. So all you see, all these stars that you see coming out, those are going to be ATPs that are going to be created from that process. So we're going to come back to that video in a later part when we talk about the whole process. So ATP synthase is definitely going to be the more common way. 90% of the time it's going to happen that way. So ATP synthase is going to use that energy stored in the gradient of protons. And if we look here, this is just a still picture of that video I just showed you. So you can see we've got these H plus over here, high concentration here, low concentration down here. So what's going to happen is they're going to go through the ATP synthase. That's going to cause it to turn. And as it turns, it's going to make ADP bond with a phosphate, and that's going to make ATP. So that's how ATP synthase is going to work, and that's how the majority of ATP is going to be made in our bodies. So on the next video, we're going to start talking about the stages of cell respiration, because that's a pretty scary group of things, and I want to really make sure you understand that and you can go back over it as much as you want.